Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around we had Terror of the Zygons. What was that one about?
Tell me. Zygons were...
So the Zygons were in Scotland and they were going to take over the Earth because they lost their planet and they wanted to terraform the Earth by using human labor.
That's right. Also
they had the Loch Ness Monster and also UNIT was there.
Okay. I think we both said we liked the makeup and the costuming for them. Not, in my opinion, quite as good as the Draconians or the Sontarans, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
And, of course, this whole thing started off with blowing up some oil platforms, which I think never really got completely explained. But, yeah, the control of the Loch Ness Monster and trying to get it to leave the loch by an underground cavern and make its way down to London to terrorize the city, which they essentially said, we'll just explain it away by you didn't really see what you saw. So, anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
And when they left, the Doctor had the Brigadier and Harry and Sarah and said, hey, we're off to our next adventure. And, of course, the Brigadier didn't go, but Harry declined, and then he said Sarah, and she hesitated for a moment, but she said, oh, all right, and then she went along with him, and that's where it left off.
Pretty much, yeah. So it is apparently looking to be the end of Harry, which one season, it seems really short, but I mean, I guess we've had some characters for shorter. Like that was 6 total episodes from Robot to Terror of the Zygons, so it's not too short a run, honestly. So
I kind of liked him. You know, again, he was on the level of Stephen.
Yeah.
Not up to Ian or Jamie.
Yeah, he felt like he felt like if we had taken Benton with us,
yeah.
You know? Just with more of a focus on him being a doctor as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, he was a very interesting character. So now going back to just having Sarah Jane will be interesting. So, yeah, because it's been quite a while, because pretty much all of the Third Doctor's era, he only had the one companion, and he also had UNIT, but still, the one main traveling companion. So it was nice having multiples again, but I don't know if we're going to pick up a new one or not, or I don't know. I don't know where we're going, really, so...
Planet of Evil.
Planet of Evil, which is 4 parts long, so we'll be doing all 4 of them in this video. And
there seem to be a lot of these serials that have planet in the title. We had, Planet of the Spiders, Planet of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Now Planet of Evil.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there was there wasn't a Planet of the Cybermen.
No, but there was a web planet.
Yeah. There might actually be an episode called Planet of the Cybermen. We just haven't seen it yet. So, yeah. Lot of different planets. And a lot of... The 10th planet. There's also a lot of blank of the blank. You know, you've got Terror of the Autons, Terror of the Zygons, anything of the Daleks, and Revenge of the Cybermen, Tomb of the Cybermen. So, it's not the most creatively named batch of episodes.
Not that we're complaining.
Yes, it's just an observation. But I will say, sometimes I give that slight credit. Most of the time, they're pretty straightforward. They're easy to understand. Because sometimes I'll go to a show like Better Call Saul, and I just look at the title, I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? You know?
Yeah.
And... like, the latest episode I watched was called Pinata. And I was like, okay, so what's that? And it's not until the very last scene that there is a scene with pinatas in it. And I was like, is that why you named the episode after that? So, it's...
Well, is somebody getting slapped around a lot in the episode? Because, I mean, when you have a pinata, the whole idea is to whack it with a stick until it breaks open.
I'm sure it's Better Call Saul. I'm sure there's a 10-hour theory video about, explaining why that episode is called Pinata. So, they actually do that in the first season of Better Call Saul. This is so stupid, but every single title has an O at the end of it. So, like, the first one is Uno, and then Miho, and they go through a bunch of those. But I think it's like the 4th or the 5th episode is not... It breaks away from that only because they couldn't get the rights to Jell-O. And again, there's really no reason that they did that. They just felt like doing that. But that's Better Call Saul for you. So, anywho.
Anyway, let me just point out, I just noticed this originally aired in September of 1975. I had just that summer, May, June, July, and part of August, spent my first summer here in Oklahoma doing repertory theater. I got offered a graduate assistantship at the University of Oklahoma. So by this time, in September of 75, I was working on finishing my degree at the University of Arizona. I had a full-time job and a part-time job because I was trying to save up money to move back here. And then graduated in 76 and came here and have been living here since May of 1976 permanently.
Now, you said that there was a time where, I mean, you weren't like closely watching Tom Baker episodes, but you caught a couple of them, right?
Yes. Now, again, about, and this is a very odd story, I'll make it as short as possible. The Rocky Horror Picture Show started becoming a cult classic, and down in Norman, which is where I was living, they used to have it showing on midnight on Friday and Saturday night. And a group of us used to go down, usually at least once a week. And we would meet at one of our friends' house. And she always, this was, again, 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30 on a Saturday night, that PBS was showing Tom Baker's stuff. And I don't know if they were showing it the same week as BBC, maybe not. But anyway, so we used to watch Doctor Who while we were waiting to go to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And so I saw a few of Tom Baker, and I kind of liked him. Again, I had not been aware that Doctor Who had continued past, when I had seen it. So it was interesting catching up on what had happened with Troughton and Pertwee and then him. And then, of course, after that, you just kind of every now and then went, oh, wait a minute, they've got a new Doctor. Where are they now? What are they doing? So
that is basically just every 5 years or so. It's like, oh, they've got a new one. Oh, well,
yeah.
Interesting. So I would be curious. I'm going to doubt that you remember any specifics from the episodes you watched.
I vaguely remember, I want to say, I vaguely remember Tom Baker and some people running through what looked to be a quarry with explosions going off. And that was just what we just watched in Genesis of the Daleks at the beginning of that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, again, if that played in 75... that would have been way early because I don't really remember seeing it until like 77 or 78.
Yeah.
So maybe they were a year or two behind here in the United States, and that's why I would vaguely remember that.
Could be. Or, I mean, running through a quarry and there are explosions describes a lot of episodes.
It could have been anything, yeah.
Yeah. So, who knows? Maybe, in 2 or 3 seasons we'll catch that episode and you'll be like, oh, wait, it's that one. There you go.
Yeah.
So, but anyway... Or, who knows, it could be this episode for all we know. So yeah, we might as well find out as we get to Planet of Evil.
Since we've been talking for 9 minutes about nothing.
Yep. Let's go. Well, yeah, that's Planet. But is it evil?
Well, it's red, it must be.
Sorry, Mars. This looks old school.
Chop some firewood there, are you?
Look.
Oh, no, it's not an axe.
No, it's a sign. It's a tombstone.
Let's look at this, Baldwin. It's showing more than 70 pure.
We'll never make base from here, sir, if we don't leave now.
The last time we hit a vein as rich as this, it knows, it senses what we're trying to do.
I'm not trekking back through that jungle in the dark. If you don't come now, I shall have to leave you.
Well, then leave. Leave.
70% pure. It's still not as good as Heisenberg's blue meth. Oop. Oh, maybe it's invisible monsters again.
here.
Well,
So I don't think this is filmed outdoors.
no. I haven't been in here in a while.
We've come out of the time vortex the wrong point, that's all. A few years too late.
How many?
30,000.
Stand by for emergency materialization.
Well, I wonder if this is Earth, 30,000 years in the future. But no, they already did that.
That looks to be a Star Trek influenced
There
vessel
it is.
with the
Zeta
nacelles.
Minor, last planet of a known universe.
Jeez. Well, it took 30,000 years to get to the last possible planet.
Orbital. We've enough for the return journey and an emergency reserve. I cannot waste that on a low-level scan.
It's your decision, Controller. I'll get equipped for descent.
Interesting reversal of roles. Usually it's the older man who's at command.
Well,
Looks like we're too late.
Several months too late by the look of him.
well, the bodies come back at least.
Yeah. Teleport it.
Well,
There were 8 in your expedition.
Yes, we've had difficulties. Conditions are hard. We've lost some, but the important thing is the mission has been a success. We found what we came to find.
How many have you lost?
He'll be fine now. It's just tiredness. He needs a good rest. It's not far.
it's very suspicious.
I think you and your friend the Doctor know much more about Zeta Minor than you want us to think. Take her away. Commence landing procedure.
You know, we never meet, like, nice, believable people.
The history of science fiction leads us to believe that most alien races are going to be hostile.
We've searched a wide belt of the jungle in all directions. No sign of any other life.
So that seems to narrow the killer down to our 2 aliens. Prepare to execute them.
I mean, if you look around like a scientist...
But he's not a scientist, he's a military man.
I mean, there's like 1,000 different things in this one shot that look deadly. And then there's that.
That, I think, takes its inspiration from Forbidden Planet, where the monster was invisible, so they put up a perimeter around the spaceship that has electrical charges, and they ultimately, I think, called it the id monster. When it comes in, it is outlined in electricity and looks quite a bit like that.
It also slightly resembles the Warden in Minecraft, actually. It's got that same sort of thing going on. Alright, well, that is part 1.
Well, not a lot of action, but it does have an intriguing story. You know, they've landed literally on the edge of the universe.
Yeah.
Scientific expedition's been there for some time. The professor may or may not be in league with the monster, because it seems odd that he had stayed out all night and was not consumed by the monster. Again, that's very similar to Forbidden Planet, which again we have to watch. And now you've got the rescuers coming down, and essentially now thinking that because they can't find anything else, it has to be the Doctor and Sarah Jane, and that's where we left it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really would look up the writer of this and see if he had been influenced by Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
Although that would have been 20 years before this episode,
Well,
because that came out in the 50s.
what else was I going to say? There's something... Oh, it was the whole thing of the bodies looking like they'd been dead for months.
Yeah.
Which I can only assume that's more of just they're so far gone that it misleads the Doctor when it probably is only just the other night that this happened.
And by the way, because I know I've mentioned Forbidden Planet before, one of the reasons why, even though it was done in the 50s, it's still considered to be one of the most classic science fiction stories. Aside from the brilliant special effects for that time, it's actually based on a Shakespearean play. It's based on The Tempest, where you have a man who is in control of several spirits on this bizarre island. One is a very happy-go-lucky spirit, which is embodied by Robbie the Robot in Forbidden Planet. And then you have the id character, who is based on this character named Taliban, who's a rather, I don't want to say he's evil, but he certainly is not a happy-go-lucky type. And then you have these strangers who are shipwrecked there, and they are having to deal with both the Professor, Prospero, and then his minions and even his beautiful daughter. That's the only thing this is missing, is Sorensen having a beautiful daughter. Although Sarah Jane may fill in that particular role.
So what you're saying is they took a classic Shakespearean story and adapted it to sci-fi. In a similar vein, it kind of that Disney tried to do with Treasure Planet instead of Treasure Island, and the same thing that Gankutsuo did for The Count of Monte Cristo, putting it 5,000 years in the future.
And then, of course, there are people who say that The Lion King's plot is very similar to that of Hamlet.
Yeah. And then The Lion King 2 is similar to Romeo and Juliet in that it sucks. So.
But The Lion King 1.5, if you haven't seen that, is really funny.
Yeah. We're also specifically talking about the 90s Lion King. I was about to say the animated Lion King, but the new one is still animated, so yeah, we're talking about the original, so yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Guess we could call this Forbidden Planet of Evil. I meant to tell you too, a couple of weeks ago when we were watching something, you had paused the kaleidoscope there at the end, and I swore that there was a face in the upper right-hand corner. But I haven't seen it since. That's a very fascinating technique there.
Shoot! A witness! No, Mark Hamill.
Can they not hear that inside?
I guess not. Dang it. This was gonna prove their innocence. Ugh. Oh, yeah, so very quick.
And Jock and Day stands tiptoe on the misty mountain top. Or something like that.
Oh, you mean it's getting light?
That's what Shakespeare meant.
Doesn't it like daylight?
That is the question.
Oh, Doctor, where he goes?
Is it just an invisible vampire?
But again, in Forbidden Planet, the id creature turns out to be just that. It's actually the professor's subconscious, if I recall correctly, that has been manifested into this, electrical demon. Joined with an actual eyeball in it.
I met him once, you know.
Who?
Shakespeare.
That's...
Charming fellow. Dreadful actor.
Perhaps that's why you took up writing.
I calculate that 6 pounds of this material in our own solar system would produce heat equivalent to the output of our own sun over a period of 3 centuries.
Jeez.
Well, don't you understand, man? Full-scale exploitation of this planet would provide us with perpetual energy in any quantity whenever we needed it.
Well, I'm starting to realize why someone may be mad on this planet.
Here, on Zeta Minor, is the boundary between existence as you know it and the other universe which you just don't understand.
Other universe?
Yes. From the beginning of time, it has existed side by side with a known universe. Each is the antithesis of the other. You call it nothing, a word to cover ignorance. And centuries ago, scientists invented another word for it. Antimatter, they called it.
Nonsense.
It's tempting to let them go ahead and destroy themselves. The trouble is, they wouldn't be the only ones.
How do you mean?
Cataclysm.
Big Bang.
Yes. The end of the universe.
What's that?
This is a crazy episode all of a sudden.
It's just an idea.
The coffee box.
Compression units.
Get out there and stop it!
Well, at least they're gonna figure out what's going on.
Force field barrier.
That's exactly what happens to the id monster. Oh, it's no Chumbly.
Well,
He's going to jump in it.
maybe. Well, the negotiations were short. That didn't work. So much for the Doctor's influence, presumably being a Time Lord.
Well, depends on how he comes out the other side.
Well. So, okay. So this took a turn that I wasn't expecting. But it's a very clever idea that this planet is on the edge of the known universe, but in coming here, you've crossed into the other universe, technically.
I think what they're trying to imply, not that the entire planet is in the other universe, but this is the connecting point, and perhaps that hole in the ground is like a black hole that goes between our universe and the antimatter universe.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, now
It's like Kansas City. It's part of two states.
Yes. It has to be the strangest connection that we have ever made.
It's on the border. It works.
All right, so underneath all of this is the idea of climate change and the use of fossil fuels. I mean, that's very, very subtle in there because they said, look, you know, our sun is dying out. We need to do something, but this is not the way to do it. That is very similar to, you know, coal, oil, natural gas, etc., etc. We need alternatives, but some of the alternatives, like nuclear, are just as dangerous. So I'm wondering if the next two episodes we're going to see some kind of message about using renewables, whether it's, you know, water or solar or whatever.
Which we kind of got a bit of that last episode with the destruction of the oil rigs. And I think the doctor was being a bit cheeky about it. It's like, oh, you know, it's about time your leaders realize that you can't depend on some slime as, you know, a fuel source forever. So, yeah, it could do something like that. I also like how, you know, their sun is dying. They're going to lose their energy. Clearly, you know, this solar system will be inhospitable after that. I love how last episode was about an alien race that lost their planet and so tried to take over Earth. And it's like, well, you know, why do you got to take over Earth? Why can't you just go find somewhere else? You know, a nice, you know, uninhabited planet. There's a lot of those. You know, you could go do that. Or just ask nicely to be a part of this planet. And then this episode is the opposite of that. Like, no, they're trying to do something. They're trying to save their home. They just happen to go to the one planet they shouldn't have. So,
the planet at the end of the universe.
Yeah, so I will at least give them credit for not trying to go and, like, it's not a story of like, well, we're going to, you know, just come here and colonize and, oh, the natives don't like us or something like that. It's that they were trying to find an alternative energy, but it's just not the place to do it. And even still, you're right, this mineral isn't a renewable energy because, I mean, like, what was it, 6 pounds would power the star for 3 centuries?
Yeah, 300 years.
Yeah,
right.
Which is something, but...
This is what I'm talking about. Look just to the right of Doctor Who Tom Baker. Do you see basically a face?
Oh, just like right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit. It almost looks like a gorilla's face, honestly.
Yeah, because it's distorted, but you can definitely see eyes, eyebrows, and literally a man's head with almost a widow's peak in the front.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
That must have been where you stopped it, because, again, it was a little bit clearer than that. But, yeah, it makes you wonder if the guys who created the kaleidoscope literally did stuff like that, assuming that nobody would ever know. I mean, they used to call that subliminal messaging.
Yeah. What am I trying to think of? Like, there's something like that where it's like if you pause it at just the right point, there's like a face and stuff. Well, and I mean, that's pretty much like all creepypastas and stuff. Have you ever heard of those?
No.
I don't know how to describe it. A creepypasta is like the stupidest horror story you could hear on the internet. So it'll basically be like if you're just on some website and there's this story of like, oh, I put this game into my Nintendo, but Mario was bleeding or something like that. It's always the dumbest, like, and they're generally about video games, like this video game is haunted. So,
in the 90s version of The Lion King, there for years, people who say at the point where the growing up Simba talks to Mufasa in the stars, that if you literally take it frame by frame, the word sex appears.
Oh yeah, it's like in the flower petals or something that get kicked up. Yeah, so that's always fun. So,
but this is actually something that happened again in the late 50s, early 60s, and I don't know specifically who did it, but the idea behind subliminal messaging is you put in a visual that literally cannot be seen by the eyes, but is still picked up by your brain. And the idea was, in those opening previews of coming attractions, when they would show the concession stand, go on out to the lobby and get a 7-Up, it would flash like the word eat, or flash the word popcorn or Coke or something like that, which would subliminally in your mind make you say, you know what, before the movie starts, why don't we go out and grab another Coke? And the idea behind that was it had to be banned, because if you could implant in somebody's mind the idea of going out and getting a Coke, could you implant something in their mind that they would not want to do? Like, donate all their money to the government, or, become an assassin, a Manchurian candidate sort of thing. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And didn't the Beatles do something of like the Paul is dead or something like that?
The whole Paul is dead thing, there are several songs that if you interpret the lyrics, and there's one of them where if you wait at the very, very end of the song, and it goes on for like 2 minutes, in the background you hear John Lennon, according to the theory, saying, "I buried Paul." But if you don't slow it down so much that it distorts like that, he actually ended up saying, "I'm very bored."
That feels intentional, specifically. Yeah. So,
and one of them, you literally have to play the song backwards, and you hear John Lennon or somebody saying, "Turn me on, dead man."
Yeah, because I think I heard about that like, it's not just that you play it backwards, because I think it's like if you play it normally, even if you played that backwards, actually, it wouldn't actually be that. It's like they specifically like made it to where when you reverse it, it plays something that shouldn't have been there. So,
and there's all the whole idea of A Day in the Life. He blew his mind out in a car. McCartney had died in a car accident, and they had replaced him. The cover of Abbey Road, there's a Volkswagen parked in the background, and the license plate is 28IF, and McCartney would have been 28 years old if he had lived at the time of the publishing of that album. And the four of them crossing the road, it's like John Lennon is dressed in white, so he's supposed to be the preacher, and McCartney is barefoot with a cigarette in his hand, so he's the corpse, and that's the coffin nail. And then Ringo has this really kind of Carnaby Street suit on, so he's the Undertaker. And George Harrison is in blue jeans and a jean shirt, a chambray shirt, so he's supposed to be the Undertaker. It was just like thousands of little things that were supposedly put in there that McCartney has laughed at that literally all of his life, because if this guy is a replacement, he is one of the most prolific composers of all time. He has literally composed and published more music than Mozart had.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing, license plate, if you look at a license plate, that's like the dumbest thing ever. Because there was actually, on Top Gear, this was like the last special they ever did, where they went to Argentina, and the goal at the end of the special was, all right, we're going to go to like the southernmost town on Earth, and we're going to set up a car football, stadium, and we're all going to play car football with the Argentinians, and we're going to, we're going to try to ease tensions between the Argentinians and the British. But on one of their license plates, it had it said 982 FKL, and the Argentinians thought, oh, clearly they got that specifically to reference the Falkland Wars. Yeah. And it was a whole huge controversy. They were actually basically kicked out of Argentina, violently. It was really, really terrible. But yeah, all of that stemmed from a license plate that they didn't, they claim they didn't mean to get that one intentionally. But it's I don't know. So I feel like, yeah, what was it, the 28 IF? Yeah. That's so stupid. He would have been 28 if he was alive. So
come for the Doctor Who, stay for the Paul is dead theories.
Exactly. and this is all just because you saw a face in the credits.
Yeah, but it's right there. You can see it.
Yeah.
And again, knowing how tongue-in-cheek and how whimsical a lot of these Doctor Who people were, it does not surprise me at all that they might throw in, again, something very subliminal like that. Yeah. And it's not, it's obviously not one of the Doctors. It may be one of their own faces, or it may just be that we see something there and our minds automatically anthropomorphize it.
Yeah, it's like finding Jesus in your toast or something. Is it really Jesus, or do you just toast your toast weirdly? Or whatever the Cheeto market is. Have you seen that? And we're gonna get back to Doctor Who in a sec, but there's an entire $1,000 market on eBay for Cheetos, where you can just get one weird looking Cheeto for thousands of dollars. So
P.T. Barnum famously said, "There's a sucker born every minute."
Yeah. Anywho,
all right, and strangely enough, that's only episode 2.
It is.
We still have 2 episodes, even though the Doctor theoretically solved the whole problem at the end of part 2.
He did kind of solve everything. So. All right.
Oh, look, there's a face.
Yeah, I'm just looking everywhere now to see.
We must prepare to launch. I agree. Wyszynski, see that Professor Sorensen's mineral samples are removed.
All right, he's doing the right thing.
You destroy years of my life's work.
You are a civilian aboard a military vessel. There will be no further argument.
Who would have thought the military would be the voice of reason?
No.
We've seen the military science problems before. But it's usually the military that's giving grief.
Well,
I wonder if there are outtakes where, you see them falling flat on their face, or she gets something in the face just like that.
Oh, man. It's just like Loki. He'll be falling for 30 minutes.
My precious.
We'll just put on some sunglasses. They'll never notice.
So the plot thickens.
Could be worse. You could be a werewolf. Yeah, just drink more of that.
You said he could have been a werewolf?
I did say that. Maybe it's just a very intense 5 o'clock shadow.
Hath a good soldier gone to the greatest army of them all?
Out into space to drift forever.
It's clean and tidy.
It's horrible.
It's okay, he'll land on the Genesis planet.
We want to examine that space machine of yours.
Why?
We believe you to be responsible for all the deaths.
Come on,
Unless you
man.
cooperate, I shall kill you in the...
It's stupendous.
What's wrong? You all right?
Yes,
Now we have a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde twist.
Oh no. It's just like Morbius.
That's right.
Externally, as you can see, it resembles a London police box.
Open it!
Ooh!
Nice work, Doc.
It's the greatest thing the Fourth Doctor's ever done.
It's an energy vampire
No.
in the form of a werewolf. Or fluid vampire, I guess.
A hybrid creature running amok.
Don't move!
Dahan.
Oh, he recovered.
You've killed Dahan!
Now listen, sir.
Ow! Alrighty. Well, so much for Salabar being reasonable. Oh well.
Now, although that first episode was a setup for everything, these last two, the episodes 2 and 3, have a lot of action to them. There's a lot of twists. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Again, even if you were not aware of the homage, as it were, to Forbidden Planet, it's still a great story.
Yeah. Well, and just the atmosphere is really good in this. Like, this definitely sells it as a horror episode.
Yeah.
So, that's another word like terror that I can't ever pronounce properly. So, now, the one thing is, I understand why he would suspect the Doctor, but should he not also suspect Sorensen?
Yeah.
Like, it's a little obvious, especially with everything of him saying, like, oh, we got to keep the minerals at all costs and stuff. It's like, you should probably suspect him, you know? So, and still do the search for the antimatter.
Yeah, because they got rid of the Doctor's antimatter, didn't they?
I think so.
Or did Sorensen steal that?
Maybe.
But yeah, it's obvious the Doctor doesn't have it anymore, so that means, you know, if who's the Salamar. If he were thinking straight, he would have to say, well, we've got the Doctor here, he doesn't have the antimatter on him, so that means it's somewhere on the ship. You know, we must find it before we end up, you know, executing him.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, you know, you said at the beginning the sort of command dynamic of, you know, the young man is in charge and you've got the older man sort of as the first officer, and now the younger man being too rash about everything. So it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. But also very similar to the two Peladon episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
Where you have the young king and the young queen.
Yeah, so.
This is Command Day! Send help!
Well, I mean, this'll prove it.
Help!
Ah, just in the nick of time.
Can't be wasting our time down there.
They caused it all.
How could they have caused this? We were with them. Attention! All crewmen report to assembly point immediately. Red alert! Red alert!
Countermanded! Only I can give a red alert.
It's too late for any more mistakes, Salamar. I'm taking command.
You'll regret this.
Good
was
flip.
graceful.
That's how I get off of a couch.
Sorensen is anti.
Yes. He's been infected with antimatter. His brain cells are being destroyed. He'll descend to the level of a brute.
You know, Anti-Man sounds like a villain for Pepsi Man.
That's the command deck.
And the antimatter has turned Sorensen into that monster.
It's incredible. Sorensen. Salamar.
Keep away.
He didn't take his
Don't
gun
be
from
a
him?
Fool!
No.
You think you've discovered an oral vaccine to protect you against antiquark penetration, but you're wrong.
It worked.
For a time. But it set up a cycle of chemical change. There's no way back, Sorensen.
So he did try at
Point
least.
where your tissues are so monstrously hybridized, the next metabolic change could be the final one. There isn't much time.
No.
So it really is like Morbius.
You, controller, you haven't a hope.
Well, I'm not sure what he's doing now.
Sorensen doesn't get him, the radiation will.
Really was a Mr. Hyde situation.
There's two of them?
I guess. Or maybe he's just moving back and forth really fast. Oof. Well, you know it's serious when he actually uses the TARDIS.
Oh.
I did kind of want when he threw that down just to... Boom! Ow! That's nice, he got cured. Oh good, there are others that survived.
I've discovered a new source of energy.
No, Professor. I think you'd abandoned that line. You decided to concentrate on deriving energy from the kinetic force of planetary movement.
Had I?
Yes, vast source of untapped energy there.
The kinetic force of planetary movement.
Goodbye,
What a brilliant
Wyszynski.
idea.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Doctor.
Goodbye, Wyszynski. Come on, Sarah. We've an appointment in London. We're already 30,000 years late.
And there it goes.
First time we've seen it spinning in space.
Well, alrighty. That is Planet of Evil.
Well, the fourth episode wasn't quite as action-packed as 2 and 3, but again, they had a lot of stuff to resolve, so...
Yeah. It all still works out.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And again, as I said earlier, even if you didn't know the references to Forbidden Planet, it's still a very good story in its own right.
Yeah, definitely. I like that at the end he just completely changed Sorensen's field of science. Just like, oh, well, why don't you do this instead? Oh, that's a great idea. I'll just do that instead.
And again, the kinetic motion of planets, that's a renewable resource because planets always move.
Yeah, so... Alrighty. So, to jump into the notes, the last planet in the universe. Which is an interesting idea. It kind of reminds me... I had an idea once for a story that was like... Because there's the whole thing of the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, you know, millions and millions, if not maybe a billion years from now, will eventually collide into each other and then take another, you know, millions and millions, possibly a billion years to reform into one thing. And I thought, oh, that'd be an interesting story if it's like, well, that's about to start. They're about, like, maybe 3 miles from each other, and there's just one planet in between that or something. And, like, that could be a sort of interesting thing. And that's... You can kind of get that from this a little bit. Just this planet with the... I guess the portal to the world of antimatter.
Yeah.
Which we've already had the world of antimatter because we had that with the 3 Doctors and Omega. So it's interesting sort of bringing that concept back. So yeah. So that was interesting.
I was going to say that Zeta was towards the end of the Greek alphabet, but it really isn't. it's towards the middle. But most people might associate that because they think of the letters Z or Z as the last letter of the alphabet. But again, I mean, the idea of naming this, instead of Planet of Evil, because it wasn't specifically evil, it was just people, the antimatter people trying to protect their universe as well as ours.
Well,
just the planet at the end of the universe would have been an interesting title.
Yeah. Isn't that something in Hitchhikers?
Yeah, the restaurant at the end of the universe.
Right. So, if only that was there. So.
Well, again, 75. I can't remember when Douglas Adams wrote the Hitchhiker trilogy.
Yeah. So, which that also, again, is that sort of space aesthetic that I like, of just like going out. You're just in space, but you're also just at a burger joint, and you're just sort of looking out at like a whole solar system, and eating some nice fries and drinking a space Coke and stuff. So
it's like that scene in Spaceballs.
Yeah. So, yeah. Let's see. We've got the signal and the body. So again, it was what I said of just the doctor thinking, oh, it must be months that the signal has been going on if these bodies are so bad. But that's just showing how drained they all were.
Yeah.
So,
and not drained of energy, which seemed to be what the antimatter beast was doing, but drained of bodily fluids, which again, that's literally more of an Earth kind of vampire sort of situation.
Yeah.
Now, I could understand if they were drained of energy. If they did the scan of the body and said there's literally no electrical activity or molecular activity at all. They're literally just a solid chunk now with no life in them at all in any in literally on an atomic level.
Yeah. And I know at some point in the Fourth Doctor's era we are going to get a story with a vampire. So I almost wonder if maybe they're testing the waters of that. That'd be kind of interesting. And I know actually there is another episode called The Mind of Morbius. So it's separate from the vampire episode, actually. So yeah. But let's see. Okay, so we had everything. Honestly, this is sort of one of those where it's like, I have separate notes, but I almost need to sort of group them together. So I guess we can talk about Salamar, because he's an interesting character, if a frustrating character.
Yeah.
And what was it? I feel like it was 2 episodes ago or something where... Oh, it was Revenge of the Cybermen at the end of season 12, where the people there, they pretty much... I mean, they sort of suspected at the beginning that, oh, well, maybe the Doctor or the gang killed it. Or no, they didn't, because they thought it was the plague that happened. They thought, oh, well... we walk in, we see you over a body, we think it's the space plague and not you. And I liked that they were very willing to listen to the Doctor when it came to, his knowledge of Voga and the Cybermen and everything. And that was really refreshing, because here we have the opposite of that with Salamar, this military type who, immediately suspects, and for a while, with good reason to suspect, the Doctor and Sarah Jane. But then as it goes forward, it was nice because he did come around. He was starting to listen to reason, and even when Sorensen wanted to just, let's just leave and take the minerals and stuff, he's like, well, no, we obviously can't do that. I've been given the reasons why. It'll be too dangerous. It'll probably end up with all of us dying, so let's get rid of it. Until later, when he was like, no, this must be the Doctor who caused all of this. I've gone insane, and now I will use the nuclear thing, nuclear power thing that we have just over on the wall, and I will ruin everything.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird arc for him. It was nice to see Wyszynski ultimately take control, although that seemed way too easy, because he's not controller, and he doesn't cite any regulations. They don't force Salamar to stand down. He just says, I'm taking over, and Salamar goes, you'll regret it. So, but again, these are minor things. Overall, again, the story was very enjoyable. Very believable, too, that you literally have figured out that you can use antimatter to power the sun for several centuries. But what you don't realize is if you take the antimatter out of the antimatter universe, then it's going to, not only blow up your ship, but it may cause the destruction of both universes. So,
yeah. So I mean, it is interesting, and it's not really bad what ends up happening to Salamar. It's just a bit strange of the way he lost it, basically. Yeah. So, and
there would be it would have been nice to have some reference to Omega, because he was in the antimatter universe, was he not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and the Doctor said, "Oh, I recognize this. This is, I've dealt with this before."
Which maybe, because I guess there's also the thing of, this is a completely separate universe. So I find it interesting how much a Time Lord has sway over this situation. And that's great. I like when the Doctor, sort of brings out his authority as a Time Lord, even though he's a Time Lord, but he's also the renegade one, I don't know. I have no way of comparing that, but it's always interesting when he does that. But yeah, you would almost think, the people of the universe of antimatter might be like, oh, you're a Time Lord. Wait a minute, we had a Time Lord in our universe. He went crazy. Unless the only thing I could think is if Omega's universe was a different antimatter universe.
Multiple parallel universes.
It could be, yeah. But
although, didn't they say Omega, whatever they called him, didn't they say he had created a pocket universe? Or was that in the Doctor's wife?
No, you're thinking of the Doctor's wife, I think, because that was like a planet or something just outside the universe, something like that. Yeah. So, and I mean, there's a lot of stories like that, but
isn't that also how they ended up saving Gallifrey, is putting it into a pocket universe?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
So theoretically, with the Omega and with this, they're kind of years down the line creating the basis for all of this, parallel and pocket universes stuff.
Right. Yeah. Which I don't know. It's sort of an interesting thing to think because again, watching these, it's always fun to sort of contextualize this with what they've done since the episode. And there is in the latest seasons, they say there's a whole thing of oh, the universe is going to be destroyed, and this group of people that they're basically like the Time Lords if they actually interfered. And it wasn't the whole, because the Time Lords, their whole thing is we don't interfere until we do, but we don't say that. This group is like, no, we do interfere. We do interfere in everything. And their whole thing was, well, this universe that we've been following for 60 years is going to be destroyed, and we're going to go to a different universe. So now I'm just trying to think well, wait, I wonder how that falls in with all these other different universes we've established since, all the way going back to at least the Three Doctors, So, and I know it's sort of, it doesn't, I don't need to be bringing up modern Doctor Who as much as I do, but I do. So, and it's nothing against this episode. I'm not nitpicking, I'm not saying anything like that. It's just an interesting observation. Yeah. It's an interesting sort of mind game of trying to basically trying to make sense of 60-year-old canon that nobody thought of.
Yeah.
So, anywho, let's see. But yeah, we had everything. I mean, at least with Salamar, there was the interesting sort of power dynamic between him and Sorensen for a little while, which was interesting. Just this whole thing of Sorensen, he does have this great authority and all that with the scientific community, but this is a military expedition, and and it is also one of those things where I feel like when you're just out there, just way too far out there, I feel like the person in charge of that vessel should probably be the one in charge, or the Doctor. But that's only because we're on Doctor Who. But it's I don't know, because it's also the thing, you kind of get that on Star Trek a bit, where, I mean, most of the time it's like the evil admiral who, for some reason, now that they're an admiral, they went evil. Yeah. So that's probably what Kirk told Picard, never to become an admiral. It's like, it's not worth it, you'll lose it. But it is one of those things like, well, the admiral takes charge and stuff, and it's like, well, and that makes a bit more sense than Sorensen, because they are of that higher rank than the captain of the starship, but it's their starship. They've been the one who, who knows it inside and out, because they've been running it. So I don't know, but still, it was interesting. And then everything with the antimatter universe was just very, very interesting. And honestly, because when you start off this episode and they're in they're in a forest, but it was a set, and I'm looking at this like, oh, I've seen this before, and so I'm starting to get worried a little bit, because I don't know what it is. It's just because there are good stories that take place in fake Doctor Who forests, but I always just get a bit uneasy whenever I see these nowadays. But for the most part, which, I mean, it was really only the first 2 episodes that had the forest. After that, they really, transitioned back to the ship. But this one was really good, and I did like the more horror aspect of it too. Yeah. So,
I like the Star Trek influences. Obviously the design of the ship, the use of what Star Trek would have called the tricorder, their device that looked a little bit like a Geiger counter, if I remember, when they were scanning all the people. The med bay that they put the Doctor in the first time he got zapped, and again, it's reminiscent of Star Trek, but it's not a copy of it. So it's basically built on this idea that in the future we will have devices that will be able to scan a body from external access, and that you get put into a med bay. I've essentially been in a med bay where I've hooked up to various machines which monitor my blood pressure and my heart rate and oxygen levels and all that sort of thing. So this is stuff that in 1975 was literally brand new to medicine.
I also like that shot where they're bringing in the Doctor on the stretcher, basically. Yeah. And it is one of those things I was looking at, it's like, oh boy, you don't want to drop him. You definitely, which I think, didn't that happen one time? There was some episode with Hartnell where someone had to carry Hartnell, and I think they accidentally dropped him. So yeah, and I mean, I think there were 4 of them. So, four guys can probably, carry Tom Baker around, but it's also Tom Baker. You have to take into account his hair. That probably adds 10 pounds. So, let's see. We had the negotiations, which I guess were more successful than they appeared to be. When it appears that the Doctor has been thrown down a bottomless hole, you wouldn't think it went that well, but apparently he managed to talk to them and was like, hey, I'm a Time Lord, I understand what's going on here, we'll leave the antimatter behind, we'll go, just give me some time, because it's going to be complicated because they're humans being stupid. Yeah. So, but yeah, and of course, though, he did have, he also took some of the antimatter in that little tin of his, so, in case you're wondering why he keeps looking back there, I think it's because the dogs next door are barking.
Well, that, and I think I just saw your brother out there. So,
well, if there's a shadow going past the window, then that's also why. So, yeah. Anywho, and then we had everything with Sorensen and the whole Morbius thing he was going through. And I like Morbius too, which this could also be a Jekyll and Hyde thing. I'm not familiar with Jekyll and Hyde. But he also found a vaccine for it. So he knows that he's been affected by all of this, but he tried to fix it, and it worked for a time until finally here it really started to manifest. And that does sort of remind me of the movie Morbius, because we watched that recently. Yeah. And Michael, taking, what is it, the synthesized blood or whatever the plot point was there. Yeah. I don't know. It was not a good movie. So,
but there's also I keep referencing Forbidden Planet. There's also a Jekyll and Hyde there too, because essentially the Doctor, the Prospero character, is the ego, the conscious, and the monster is the id, the subconscious the anger, the paranoia, and all that sort of thing. So, and that's all that the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character is. Dr. Jekyll is the good man. Mr. Hyde is the evil brute. So.
Yeah. I was gonna say, someone should make a new Jekyll and Hyde movie, but I think they were going to, as a part of that whole monster universe that they tried to start with Dracula Untold, and that bombed, so they made The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and that bombed. So, but I think actually in the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, it does have Dr. Jekyll played by Russell Crowe. So they were going to do something like that, but then again, that bombed and was terrible. So I don't think that's happening. But anyway, but yeah, and then we had Sorensen multiplying for a little while, which was interesting. So I guess they just became ghosts. They were pure antimatter.
But the idea was when the doctor said, or whoever said, don't take the nuclear whatever, the problem is, of course, that's like when a cell gets enough energy, it divides, and then those divide, and ultimately it becomes, instead of a single cell organism, becomes a multiple cell organism. So by subjecting him to that extra energy, all they've basically done is make it multiply. And that's the same thing at the end of, I mentioned before, the Andromeda strain. The idea is if they think the virus is going to escape the wildfire lab, they're supposed to blow it up. But as it turns out, that would have been the worst thing, because it does feed off of energy, and if they had exploded the bomb, it would have given it so much energy that the virus would have gone around the world.
Yeah. So, and luckily all those duplicates of Sorensen just sort of left once all the stuff was gone.
Yeah.
So, and then good use of the TARDIS, and using the TARDIS. Like, I feel like it's been so long, since we've been inside the TARDIS. Yeah. But just, I don't know, like, I can't even think of, like, when was the last time he used the TARDIS to save the day?
Yeah.
Like, that was really, really interesting, especially, probably really dangerous, bringing this sort of anti-man, basically, into the TARDIS and then taking him down there, But
I'm assuming that's because once inside the TARDIS before it lands, it's in the space-time continuum, and therefore it is not influenced by either the matter universe or the antimatter universe. I assume that's why he did it.
Maybe, yeah. And I did also like that Sorensen was cured at the end. Yeah. That they were like, all right, well, take all this stuff back. You can have him now that we've got all our antimatter back. So I did enjoy that, because I was honestly thinking at the end of this, like, maybe they might just, if they all just, whoever's left, get into the TARDIS and then escape, the ship will just crash down, and then all that stuff will be returned anyway. Yeah. But I like how, no, they did get it down. The ship was fine. Sorensen was cured, and there was a decent amount of people left from that crew. I was really thinking that Wyszynski was just going to be the last guy. So, but there were one or two other crew back there. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
See, sometimes I look over and I think we've been talking for about 25 minutes, and I think, is that good enough? Like, compared to, I'm trying to think of, like, percentage-wise of the video. Like, is that about, halfway or something? But I also, I've recently realized I've been doing a lot of shorter discussions, and I think that's probably for the best. People don't need to listen to me ramble on. So
we did 9 minutes before it started. We did a huge discussion in between, either 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, and then 20 minutes here at the end. So.
Yeah, basically, we have the reaction, and it's a decent chunk of the episode, especially when it's a 4-parter. But yeah, in between, when we do a 10-minute discussion about Paul is dead for no reason. So I think people probably, there's probably enough in this episode. So,
yeah. So,
what do we got next? Next up is Pyramids of Mars. Well, that says something. That's interesting.
We're going to see the Ice Warriors again, maybe?
I don't think so. I think the Ice Warriors are done. I don't think they come back. Yeah. So, I don't know. Why are there pyramids on Mars? Find out next time on Doctor Who Classic. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.